The massive throne room of Queen Zixara echoed with cruel laughter. The alien queen sat on her crystal throne, her 6 purple eyes gleaming with amusement as she watched the holographic displays floating before her. Her courtiers, tall creatures with sharp claws and armored skin, chittered and hissed their approval at every mocking comment she made. "Look at these pathetic creatures," Queen Zixara said, pointing one of her 4 arms at the images of human soldiers. "They call themselves warriors? They are so weak they need metal suits just to protect their soft skin. They cannot even see properly with only 2 eyes." The hologram showed human troops in combat gear, their faces hidden behind helmets and visors. To the Vorthak Empire, they looked small and fragile compared to the mighty alien warriors who stood nearly 8 feet tall and had natural armor covering their bodies. "My queen," said General Thaxmore, bowing his massive head, "our scouts report that these humans have weapons, but they are primitive, energy blasters and projectile firearms, nothing that could penetrate our natural defenses." The queen's laughter grew louder. "Weapons? They need tools to fight because their bodies are useless. We tear through metal with our bare claws. We can survive in the vacuum of space for short periods. What can these soft mammals do?" On the other side of the galaxy, Captain Jake Sullivan sat in his command chair aboard the Earth defense ship Liberty. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and life support systems. Jake was a man in his 30s with brown hair and steady blue eyes. He had fought in 3 different wars on Earth, but nothing had prepared him for what was coming. "Captain," said Lieutenant Lisa Hayes from her position at the communications console. Lisa was a sharp-minded woman with red hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "We're receiving an official transmission from the Galactic Council. It's marked as urgent," Jake nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing a room filled with various alien species. At the center sat Queen Zixara, her purple form commanding attention. When she spoke, her voice was filled with barely hidden contempt. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the Queen began, her 6 eyes focusing on the camera. "The Galactic Council has decided to offer your species a great honor. You are invited to participate in the trials of supremacy." Jake kept his face calm, but inside he felt his stomach tighten. He had heard rumors about these trials. They were not really an invitation. The Queen continued, "These trials will test your species' right to exist in our galaxy. You will compete against the greatest warriors from across known space. If you succeed, Earth will be granted membership in the Galactic Council. If you fail—" She paused, her mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among her kind. "Well, failed species tend to have unfortunate accidents. Asteroid strikes, solar flares, that sort of thing." The message was clear. Participate or Earth would be destroyed. You have 7 standard days to send your champions to the neutral station at Kepler 442b. Do try not to embarrass yourselves too badly. The other species are looking forward to the entertainment. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Sergeant Ben Carter, a large man with dark skin and muscular arms, was the first to speak. "Entertainment? Did she just call us entertainment?" "That's exactly what she did," said Corporal Amy Stone from her position at the technical station. Amy was young, maybe 25, with blonde hair and green eyes that missed nothing. "She thinks we're going to put on a show before we die." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars. "Maybe that's what she thinks, but we've got 7 days to prove her wrong." "Sir," Lisa said, "with respect, have you seen the intel reports on these alien species? The Zephyrians can move faster than our eyes can track. The Axolites can manipulate gravity itself. And the Vorthak," she gestured at the now blank screen. "They're living tanks. Natural armor, built-in weapons, enhanced strength. What do we have that can compete with that?" Jake turned back to his crew. These 3 people had been with him through some of the worst fighting humanity had ever seen. Lisa had planned strategies that saved thousands of lives. Ben had held impossible positions against overwhelming odds. Amy had hacked enemy systems while under fire and never missed a beat. "We have something they don't understand," Jake said quietly. "We come from Earth." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" "Think about it," Jake continued. "Every species we've encountered so far evolved to be the top predator on their world. They're used to being the biggest, strongest, fastest thing around. But Earth is different. On Earth, everything tries to kill everything else. We didn't evolve to be the apex predator. We evolved to survive when everything else was trying to eat us." Amy nodded slowly. "The Queen called us soft mammals. But she doesn't know that soft mammals on Earth survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and thousands of other species that were bigger and stronger than us. Exactly, Jake said. They think they know what humans are because they've seen our technology and our cities. But they've never seen what we're really capable of when our backs are against the wall. Lisa pulled up files on her console. I'll start reviewing everything we know about the other species. Combat tactics, weaknesses, behavioral patterns. Ben, start planning equipment loadouts, Jake ordered. We need to be ready for anything. Amy, I want you to dig into everything you can find about these trials. Rules, arena specifications, previous competitions. If there's an advantage to be found, find it. The crew got to work immediately. Jake remained at the front of the bridge, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien warriors were probably training for the trials, confident in their natural superiority. They expected to face primitive humans who would break easily under pressure. They had no idea what was coming. Jake thought about his home planet, where humans had learned to survive blizzards and hurricanes, where they had tamed fire and electricity, where they had turned every disadvantage into a weapon. Earth had tried to kill humanity for millions of years and failed. Now its children were going to the stars. The Queen wanted entertainment. Jake smiled grimly. She was going to get it, but it might not be the kind of show she was expecting. The space station orbiting Kepler 442b was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. Its gleaming metal surface was covered with docking bays, viewing platforms, and massive arena structures that could be seen from space. Ships from across the galaxy had gathered here, each carrying the champions of their species. Jake Sullivan stood at the airlock of the Liberty, wearing his standard Earth Defense Force uniform. Behind him, Lisa Hayes checked her equipment one more time, while Ben Carter hefted his gear bag, and Amy Stone ran final diagnostics on her portable computer systems. Remember, Jake said to his team, they expect us to be intimidated. Let them think that. The more they underestimate us, the better. The airlock opened and they stepped onto the station. Immediately, Jake felt the difference. The gravity was heavier than Earth standard, and the air had a metallic taste. But what struck him most was the sheer size of everything around them. The corridor they entered was built for giants. The ceiling stretched 30 feet above their heads, and the hallways were wide enough to drive a tank through. Other beings moved through these spaces with ease, their massive forms making the humans look like children. A group of Zephyrians skittered past on their 6 legs, their insect-like bodies gleaming black and green. Each one stood 7 feet tall, with razor-sharp claws and compound eyes that tracked every movement around them. They moved with unnatural speed, their forms blurring as they changed direction without warning. Fast, Ben muttered under his breath. Very fast, Lisa agreed, watching them disappear around a corner. Next came a delegation of axolites, beings that looked like living crystal formations. They floated above the ground, their bodies constantly shifting between solid and energy states. Small objects near them began to hover in the air, caught in localized gravity fields that the aliens generated without apparent effort. Amy watched her instruments spike as they passed. The energy readings are off the charts. They're manipulating fundamental forces like it's nothing. But it was the Vorthak delegation that truly dominated the space. Queen Zixara led them, her forearms gesturing as she spoke to her warriors. Each Vorthak stood nearly 8 feet tall, their purple-black exoskeletons gleaming under the station's lights. Natural bone spikes jutted from their shoulders and elbows, and their clawed hands could probably tear through steel plating. The Queen noticed the human delegation and stopped walking. Her 6 eyes focused on them, and her mandibles clicked in what Jake had learned was Vorthak laughter. So? She called out, her voice carrying easily across the vast corridor. The soft mammals have arrived. I was beginning to think you had reconsidered and fled back to your little world. Other aliens in the corridor stopped to watch. Jake could feel hundreds of eyes examining him and his team, cataloging their apparent weaknesses. He walked forward calmly, his hands relaxed at his sides. Your Majesty, Jake said with a polite nod. Thank you for the invitation. We're looking forward to the trials. The Queen's laughter grew louder, and soon other aliens joined in. The sound echoed off the metal walls like a chorus of monsters. Looking forward to them, Queen Zixara stepped closer, looming over Jake. Even with his 6-foot frame, the top of his head barely reached her shoulder. You do realize these are combat trials, don't you? Not some peaceful competition from your primitive world. We understand perfectly, Jake replied, his voice steady. One of the Vorthak warriors, a massive brute with scars covering his exoskeleton, leaned down to examine Jake more closely. This one is so small. Are you certain it is fully grown? Perhaps they sent their young by mistake, suggested another. Surely their actual warriors are larger than this. Queen Zixara waved a dismissive hand. No, these are their champions. Can you imagine? A species so weak that these tiny creatures represent their finest warriors. Amy stepped forward, her computer tablet in hand. Excuse me, Your Majesty, but could you tell us more about the arena facilities? We'd like to understand the competition format. The Queen looked down at Amy with amusement. Of course, little one. The trials consist of 3 challenges: individual combat, tactical warfare, and survival scenarios. Each is designed to test different aspects of a warrior's capabilities. She gestured toward a viewing window that showed the main arena below. The space was vast, easily a mile across, with walls that seemed to shimmer and change as they watched. The arena can recreate any environment imaginable, the Queen explained. Desert worlds, ice planets, toxic atmospheres, underwater battlefields. The survival scenario will test your ability to endure conditions that would kill most species in minutes. Lisa studied the arena carefully. And the tactical warfare challenge? Fleet command simulations, replied a Zephyrian delegate who had returned to listen. You are given command of a mixed force and must achieve victory against overwhelming odds. Foe species last perhaps 10 minutes before total defeat. The individual combat is the most entertaining, added a scarred Vorthak warrior. Single combat against a champion from another species. No weapons except what your body provides naturally. Ben looked at the alien's claws, each one longer than his fingers. No artificial weapons allowed? None, the Queen confirmed. Pure biological capability only. As it should be. True warriors don't need tools. The humans exchanged glances. Jake could see what his team was thinking. No weapons meant no guns, no explosives, no technological advantages. Just human bodies against alien forms that had evolved natural weapons and armor. When do the trials begin? Jake asked. Tomorrow, Queen Zixara said. Tonight there will be a feast where the species can observe each other before the fighting begins. I do hope you'll attend. The other delegates are quite curious about your kind. We'll be there, Jake assured her. As the alien delegations moved away, continuing their tour of the station, Amy activated her tablet and began scanning the arena below. The good news, she said quietly, is that the arena's adaptive systems run on quantum processors. I might be able to interface with them if we need an advantage. The bad news, Lisa added, is that we're going to be fighting aliens who were literally born with weapons attached to their bodies. Ben cracked his knuckles. Well, we knew it wasn't going to be easy. Jake watched the aliens disappearing down the corridor. They moved with absolute confidence, secure in their natural superiority. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing any species that dared to challenge them. But they had never faced humans before. Come on, Jake said to his team. Let's go see what we're really up against. As they walked deeper into the station, Jake thought about the Queen's words. True warriors don't need tools. She was about to learn that humans had become true warriors precisely because they had learned to use everything around them as a tool, including their enemies' expectations. The arena floor had been transformed into a rocky canyon landscape for the individual combat trials. Massive stone formations jutted up from the ground, creating a maze of hiding spots and elevated positions. The walls rose high above, lined with viewing platforms where thousands of alien spectators had gathered to watch. Jake stood at the entrance to the combat zone, checking his gear one final time. He wore lightweight Earth Defense Force combat armor, but no weapons. The rules were clear. Only natural biological capabilities were allowed. Across the arena, his opponent waited. Krathvar was a Vorthak champion, standing nearly 8 feet tall with purple-black exoskeleton gleaming under the arena lights. Bone spikes protruded from his shoulders, elbows, and knuckles. His forearms ended in claws that could slice through steel, and his mandibles clicked with anticipation. In the royal viewing box, Queen Zixara settled back in her throne, surrounded by her court. The other alien delegates filled the surrounding platforms, all eager to see how quickly the human would be eliminated. This should be amusing, the Queen announced to her courtiers. The soft mammal doesn't even have natural weapons. What does it plan to do, bite the champion to death? Laughter rippled through the alien crowds. Below in the arena, the combat referee, a neutral species called the Corvin, raised its multiple arms for attention. Combat will begin when the signal sounds, the referee announced in its mechanical voice. Victory conditions, unconsciousness, surrender, or death of opponent, begin. The horn blasted across the arena, and Krathvar immediately charged. His massive form thundered across the rocky ground, forearms spread wide to prevent any escape. His strategy was simple: overwhelm the tiny human with pure speed and strength. Jake didn't run. Instead, he moved to the side at the last second, just as the alien's claws swept through the space where he had been standing. Krathvar's momentum carried him forward, and Jake was already behind him, studying the alien's movement patterns. The crowd began to murmur. They had expected the human to either flee in terror or be crushed in the first few seconds. Instead, he was moving with calm precision, staying just out of reach while observing his opponent. Krathvar spun around, annoyed that his first attack had missed. He lashed out with all four arms simultaneously, trying to catch the human in a web of claws. Jake dropped low, rolled between the alien's legs, and came up behind him again. "Stand still and fight," Krathvar roared, his frustration growing. "I am fighting," Jake replied calmly, continuing to circle his opponent. Queen Zixara leaned forward in her throne. "What is the human doing? Why doesn't it attack?" "Perhaps it knows it cannot win," suggested one of her advisors. "It may be trying to delay the inevitable." But Jake was doing something much more dangerous than delaying. He was learning. Every attack Krathvar made, every movement and reaction, Jake filed away for analysis. He was mapping the alien's reach, timing his reflexes, looking for patterns and weaknesses. Krathvar charged again, this time trying to corner Jake against one of the rock formations. The alien's claws struck sparks off the stone as Jake slipped away at the last moment. But this time Jake didn't just evade. As he moved, he grabbed a loose piece of rock and hurled it at Krathvar's head. The rock bounced harmlessly off the alien's armored skull, but it made Krathvar stumble slightly. Jake noted the reaction and filed it away. "Using the environment," Lisa observed from the human viewing area. "Smart." The crowd was getting restless. This wasn't the quick, brutal victory they had expected. The human was making the mighty Vorthak champion look clumsy and slow. Krathvar's attacks became more frenzied. He began using the rock formations to try to trap Jake, climbing up the stone pillars with his natural claws and leaping down from above. But Jake seemed to anticipate every move, always ending up where the alien wasn't expecting him to be. Then Jake made his first real offensive move. As Krathvar landed from another failed aerial attack, Jake was waiting. He grabbed one of the alien's lower arms and used Krathvar's own momentum to throw him into a rock wall. The crowd fell silent. The human had just thrown a creature twice his size. Krathvar bounced off the rock and spun around, his 6 eyes wide with surprise. "How did you—" Jake didn't give him time to finish the question. He had identified his opponent's weakness. Krathvar relied entirely on his natural advantages. He had never learned to fight someone who could think tactically. The human began his real assault. When Krathvar swung with his upper arms, Jake ducked and struck at the alien's knee joint, targeting the spots where the natural armor was thinnest. When the alien tried to grab him, Jake used leverage to redirect the force, sending Krathvar stumbling into obstacles. Every movement Jake made was efficient and purposeful. He wasted no energy on flashy attacks or displays of strength. Instead, he turned the alien's own power against him, using physics and momentum as his weapons. "Impossible," Queen Zixara whispered. "The human is winning." Krathvar was bleeding now from several cuts where Jake had managed to target weak points in his armor. The alien's breathing was becoming labored, and his attacks were growing wild and unfocused. Jake, meanwhile, looked barely winded. He had taken a few hits, but his armor had absorbed most of the damage, and he had avoided the alien's most dangerous attacks entirely. The end came suddenly. Krathvar, frustrated and exhausted, made one final desperate charge. Jake stepped aside, grabbed the alien's arm, and used a combat technique that would have been familiar to any human martial artist. He applied pressure to a nerve cluster just behind Krathvar's elbow joint. The alien's entire right side went numb, and he collapsed to the ground, unable to coordinate his movements. "Victory to the human," the referee announced. The arena fell into complete silence. Thousands of alien spectators stared in disbelief at the human standing calmly over his defeated opponent. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans were weak, primitive creatures who relied on tools because their bodies were inadequate. But Jake Sullivan had just defeated one of the galaxy's finest warriors using nothing but intelligence, training, and the kind of adaptability that came from evolving on a planet where everything was trying to kill you. In the royal box, Queen Zixara's 6 eyes were locked on the human below. For the first time in her long life, she felt something she had never experienced before: doubt. How? She asked her advisors. How did a soft mammal defeat Krathvar? None of them had an answer. Jake helped Krathvar to his feet. The alien warrior looked at him with a mixture of confusion and newfound respect. Your species, Krathvar said slowly, is not what we expected. Jake nodded. No, we're not. As he walked toward the exit, Jake could feel thousands of alien eyes watching him. The laughter and mockery had stopped. Now there was something else in the air. Fear. The tactical warfare challenge was next, and Lisa Hayes was already preparing. The aliens had seen one human fight. They were about to see one think, and after that they would learn what happened when humans were pushed into survival mode. Queen Zixara remained silent in her throne, her mind racing. Everything she thought she knew about humans had just been proven wrong. If they were this dangerous individually, what could they do as a species? She was about to find out. The tactical warfare simulation chamber was a sphere of pure energy, 50 feet across, where holographic battles played out in 3 dimensions. Lisa Hayes sat in the command chair at the center, surrounded by control interfaces that would let her direct entire fleets across multiple star systems. The test was simple in concept, but brutal in execution. Each commander was given a fleet of mixed ships and faced against an adaptive artificial intelligence that learned from every previous battle. The AI had already defeated dozens of the galaxy's finest tactical minds, and it grew smarter with each victory. In the observation galleries, alien delegates watched with keen interest. The humans' victory in individual combat had been surprising, but tactical thinking was different. This required intelligence, not just physical ability. Surely the primitive mammals would fail here. Queen Zixara leaned forward in her viewing throne. The Axolite commanders lasted 14 minutes before total defeat. The Zephyrian tactical specialist managed 18 minutes. I wonder how long this human will survive. The simulation began. Lisa found herself in command of 30 ships of various classes: fighters, destroyers, cruisers, and 2 massive dreadnoughts. Her opponent controlled a fleet of 50 ships with superior technology and firepower. The alien observers expected her to follow standard galactic warfare doctrine: concentrate firepower, establish battle lines, engage in direct confrontation until one side was destroyed. Lisa did something else entirely. She split her fleet into 7 different groups and sent them in opposite directions. Appearing to flee from the enemy force, the alien observers chittered with amusement. The human was running away before the battle even began. Cowardice, declared General Thaxmore from the Vorthak delegation.
As expected from a species that hides behind artificial tools. But Lisa wasn't running.
She was buying time and gathering intelligence. As her scattered ships fled, they were scanning the enemy fleet, analyzing weapon patterns, shield frequencies, and communication protocols. Amy had taught her well. Information was the most powerful weapon in any battle. The AI pursued with confidence, splitting its own fleet to hunt down the scattered human ships. This was exactly what Lisa wanted. She had turned a single large battle into multiple smaller engagements where superior numbers mattered less. The first engagement came when her fastest ships encountered an enemy patrol. Instead of fighting, Lisa used them as bait, leading the enemy ships into an asteroid field where her destroyers were waiting in ambush. The enemy lost 6 ships before they realized they had been tricked. Interesting, murmured an Axolite observer. The human is using deception. A desperate tactic, Queen Zixara replied, but her voice carried less certainty than before. Lisa's fleet began a series of hit-and-run attacks, each one carefully planned to exploit specific weaknesses she had identified in the enemy formations. She used sensor ghosts to make the AI think her ships were in one location, while they attacked from another. She programmed her fighters to mimic the signatures of larger ships, causing the enemy to waste heavy weapons on targets that weren't really there. But the real surprise came when Lisa began attacking the AI's supply lines. While the enemy fleet was hunting for her main force, Her smallest ships were systematically destroying fuel depots, ammunition convoys, and repair stations. The alien observers fell silent. This wasn't how galactic warfare was conducted. There were rules, traditions, accepted methods of combat. The human was ignoring all of them. "She's not fighting a battle," Lisa's communications officer realized from the human observation area. "She's fighting a war." The AI began to adapt just as it was designed to do. It pulled back its scattered forces and formed a defensive perimeter around its remaining supply bases. But Lisa had anticipated this. She used the respite to repair her damaged ships and reorganize her fleet into a single concentrated force. When she struck again, it was with overwhelming power focused on a single point in the enemy line. The AI's ships, depleted of ammunition and fuel from her earlier attacks, couldn't mount an effective defense. Lisa's fleet punched through their formation like a spear through cloth. The battle became a rout. The remaining enemy ships found themselves cut off from supplies and support, picked off one by a human commander, who seemed to anticipate their every move. Total victory in 23 minutes. The simulation chamber fell silent. In the galleries, alien military leaders stared in disbelief at the tactical display showing the complete destruction of an AI that had never been defeated. Queen Zixara's mandibles clicked nervously. How did she do that? An elderly Corvan advisor studied the battle records with multiple optical sensors. The human didn't fight the AI directly. She fought the entire concept of how the AI expected warfare to be conducted. Every assumption the artificial intelligence made about proper tactics she violated. But those tactics are established doctrine, protested a Zephyrian general. They have been proven effective over thousands of years. Effective against opponents who follow the same doctrine, the Corvan replied. The human fought as if she had never heard of galactic military tradition. In the command chair, Lisa was already being briefed on the final challenge. The survival scenario. Ben Carter and Amy Stone would face this together, dropped into a hostile environment designed to test every survival skill known to the Galactic Council. As the tactical warfare chamber reset for the next competitor, Queen Zixara found herself reconsidering everything she thought she knew about human capabilities. First, one of them had defeated a Vorthak warrior through pure adaptability. Now another had outthought an AI that had defeated the galaxy's finest military minds. What would the final challenge reveal? The survival scenario arena reconfigured itself into a nightmarish landscape. Toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, predatory wildlife, and limited resources scattered across 100 square miles of hostile terrain. The other species' champions had lasted hours at most before succumbing to the environment. Ben and Amy were transported to the center of this death world with minimal equipment, basic environmental suits, a small supply of water, and emergency medical kits. Nothing else. The alien observers settled in to watch what they expected to be a prolonged death scene. Humans were soft creatures from a temperate world. How could they possibly survive in conditions that would kill most galactic species? They were about to learn something that Queen Zixara was beginning to suspect. Humans didn't come from a temperate world. They came from Earth, and Earth was the most hostile environment in the known galaxy. Ben looked around at the alien landscape and grinned. "You know what, Amy? This reminds me of that survival training we did in the Australian outback." Amy was already analyzing the atmospheric readings on her scanner. "Yeah, except the outback didn't have acid rain. This is going to be fun." In the royal viewing box, Queen Zixara heard those words and felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. The humans thought this death world was going to be fun. What kind of planet had created creatures that found a galactic death trap entertaining? She was about to find out, and the answer would change everything she believed about the nature of warfare, survival, and the small blue world called Earth. The survival arena had become a showcase of human ingenuity. What started as a death trap had transformed into something that looked almost habitable. Ben Carter had fashioned tools from debris and constructed a shelter that not only protected against the toxic atmosphere, but actually filtered it into breathable air. Amy Stone had hacked into abandoned alien technology scattered across the landscape, turning environmental hazards into advantages. But the real test came 12 hours into the challenge when the arena's safety protocols mysteriously failed. Creatures from a dozen death worlds were released into the environment. Acid-spitting serpents from Vex Prime, armored predators from the crystalline caves of Zorath, and pack hunters that could survive in vacuum. The alien observers leaned forward in their viewing galleries, expecting to finally see the humans overwhelmed. These were creatures that had killed champions from every major galactic species. Instead, they watched Ben and Amy work together with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. When the acid serpents attacked, Amy used her modified scanners to track their heat signatures while Ben flanked them with improvised weapons. When the armored predators charged, the humans used the terrain itself as a weapon, triggering rock slides and toxic gas pockets to drive the creatures into traps. "They're not just surviving," whispered a Corvin observer. "They're hunting." Queen Zixara stood abruptly from her throne, her 6 eyes locked on the display. "Stop the simulation now, Your Majesty." Her advisor looked confused. "The trial period hasn't expired. I said stop it." The Queen's voice echoed through the observation chamber. "Before they—" She trailed off, unwilling to voice what she was beginning to realize. But it was too late. Ben and Amy had found the control center for the environmental systems. Amy's fingers flew over alien interfaces she had learned to read during the past few hours, while Ben stood guard against the remaining predators. "Got it," Amy announced. "I can control the entire arena from here. Can you make it more challenging?" Ben asked with a grin. "This is starting to get boring." In the royal viewing box, several alien delegates made choking sounds. "More challenging?" The humans wanted the death trap to be more dangerous? Queen Zixara turned away from the display, her mind racing. Everything she had believed about human weakness was crumbling. These weren't primitive creatures stumbling through tests designed for superior beings. These were predators who had turned every disadvantage into a weapon. "Your Majesty," General Thaxmore approached carefully. "What are your orders regarding the humans?" Before she could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed as an automated voice announced, "Unknown ships detected entering the system. All species representatives report to designated safe areas immediately." The main display switched from the arena to external sensors. A fleet of sleek ships had appeared at the edge of the system, their design unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with precision and purpose, clearly military vessels despite their unfamiliar configuration. "Human ships," Jake Sullivan announced calmly from the arena floor. He had been waiting for this moment. Queen Zixara spun to face him. "What did you say?" "Those are ships from the Earth Defense Force," Jake explained, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's communication system. "They've been positioned throughout the galaxy for the past 6 months waiting for our signal." The alien delegates erupted in confused chatter. 6 months? How had human ships moved through galactic space without being detected? Amy's voice came through the arena speakers as she accessed the station's main communication array. "Fleet Admiral Marcus Kane to all galactic representatives. This is to inform you that you are now within the Sol defense perimeter. Please remain calm while we explain the new situation." On the main display, more human fleets began appearing throughout the galaxy. Ships that had been disguised as merchant vessels dropped their camouflage to reveal military configurations. Space stations that aliens thought were research outposts activated weapon systems that shouldn't have existed. Queen Zixara felt something she had never experienced in her long life. Complete tactical disadvantage. How is this possible?" "Your species was primitive. You barely had interstellar flight." Jake smiled, and for the first time there was nothing harmless about the expression. "Your Majesty, you made the same mistake that every predator species in the galaxy has made. You assumed that because we looked weak, we were weak. You never considered that appearing weak might be a strategy." The truth began to unfold like a perfectly executed battle plan. Human exploration ships had been mapping every star system, cataloging every military installation, identifying every weakness in galactic defense networks. Human colonists had established forward bases on strategic worlds. Human traders had been gathering intelligence on every major species for decades. "We've been at war with this galaxy from the moment we left Earth," Jake continued. "You just didn't know it yet." Lisa Hayes appeared on the communication channel from the Fleet Command Center. "All galactic military forces are ordered to stand down immediately. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force. We have positioned antimatter charges on every major military installation in the galaxy." The alien delegates stared in horror at their tactical displays. Human forces had somehow achieved complete strategic dominance without firing a single shot in open warfare. "This is impossible," Queen Zixara insisted. "Your technology is inferior. Your numbers are limited. How could you position forces throughout the galaxy without being detected? Amy's voice came through the speakers again, and now there was amusement in her tone. Your Majesty, you keep making the same mistake. You judge our capabilities based on what you think you know about us, but you've never seen humans when we actually want to win something. Ben Carter appeared on another channel from a command ship near the galactic capital. The thing is, we've been studying galactic warfare for 50 years. Every battle, every tactic, every strategy you've used against other species. We know how you think, how you fight, how you organize your defenses. But you've never studied us, Jake added, because you thought we weren't worth studying. The final piece of the revelation came when Amy activated holographic displays throughout the station. They showed Earth not as a single blue world, but as the center of a vast industrial complex. The moon was covered with shipyards and weapons factories. Mars had been hollowed out and converted into a fortress. The asteroid belt was a network of military bases and resource extraction facilities. Earth's not a planet, Amy explained conversationally. It's a military-industrial complex that happens to have nice beaches. Queen Zixara sank back into her throne, her exoskeleton pale with shock. What do you want? Unconditional surrender, Jake replied simply. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved. All military forces will be placed under human command. All species will be granted the same rights they enjoyed before, but under human oversight. And if we refuse? Jake's expression didn't change. Your Majesty, you've seen what one human can do in single combat. You've seen what one human can do with a fleet. You've seen what 2 humans can do in a survival situation. Do you really want to find out what 4 billion humans can do when we stop pretending to be harmless? The silence in the arena was complete. Every alien delegate understood that they were no longer dealing with a primitive species seeking membership in galactic civilization. They were facing conquerors who had been planning this moment for generations. Queen Zixara looked around at her advisors, her generals, her court. All of them were waiting for her decision. She thought about her empire, built over centuries of conquest and domination. She thought about the other species they had crushed beneath their claws. Now they were the ones being crushed, and they hadn't even seen it coming. I surrender, she said quietly. The Vorthak Empire surrenders to humanity. One by one, the other species followed suit. The Galactic Council formally dissolved itself, and the human hegemony was born. Jake Sullivan stood in the arena where it had all begun, looking up at the alien delegates who had once mocked his species as soft mammals unworthy of respect. Now they were subjects of the new galactic order, and they would learn to live under human law. Welcome to the galaxy, he said softly. Population, us. In the years that followed, historians would mark this day as the end of the old galactic order and the beginning of humanity's reign among the stars. They would study the tactics and strategies that had led to such a complete victory, but they would miss the most important lesson of all. Humanity hadn't won because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced than the aliens. They had won because they were the only species in the galaxy that understood what it meant to be prey, and prey that survives long enough eventually learns to become the ultimate predator. The universe belonged to humanity now, and it would never be the same.